Brad Dison here. I wonder if you remember this. John T. Daniels, known as John T., accidentally became a part of history. He never sought fame or fortune. He was just helping out. Until December 17th, 1902, no one had ever flown an airplane. Only a handful of people had ever successfully flown and landed gliders. Many so-called daredevils died trying. Gliders and airplanes differ in that airplanes have engines and can, under their own power, climb, turn, and descend. Controlled human flight, a dream of man since he first saw birds flying in the sky, was thought to be impossible by most people. Even today, over 100 years later, some people still say that if God had wanted us to fly, He would have given us wings. That all changed on December 17, 1902, when Orville and Wilbur Wright took turns launching, flying, and landing their flyer. But John T. isn't remembered for the Wright brothers' successful flight, which made the impossible possible. He's remembered for something that happened only a few seconds after Wilbur took the flyer on the last flight of the day. John T. was a local at Kitty Hawk who lent a hand to anyone who needed it. In fact, he helped Orville and Wilbur launch the flyer on several occasions. As Orville and Wilbur wouldn't let anyone else actually work on their flying machines, most of the tasks that John T. helped with consisted of moving things, holding things, and retrieving things. But John T. didn't mind. Like the other dozen or so people who had witnessed their impossible feats, John T. was curious and amazed. But John T. isn't remembered for something that went right. He's remembered for something that went wrong. Wilbur had just landed the flyer on what became the last flight of the day. He stepped off the airplane and was discussing the flight with Orville. John T. was holding one of the upright rudders on the flyer, listening to the discussion when a strong wind seemed to come from nowhere. This massive gust of wind lifted the flyer off the ground and sent it tumbling end over end. John T. had no time to react, and his grip was strong. He went tumbling with the flyer. When he realized what was happening, he tried to let go, but he was tangled in the chain and numerous other supporting cables. The flyer continued to tumble across the landscape and carried John T. with it. Finally, John T. came loose from the chain and cables and fell free from the flyer. It continued to tumble and came to a stop a few feet from where John T. was lying. The accident had only lasted a few seconds, but to John it seemed longer. The flyer was a delicate machine and it would certainly need a lot of repairs. But what about John T.? The human body is a delicate machine as well. Orville and Wilbur rushed to the spot where John T. was laying, and they feared the worst. They checked him over. John T. was conscious. He was coherent. They could find no blood and only a few bruises. Without ever intending to ride in an airplane, John T. Daniels, John T., had just survived the first ever airplane crash. Did you remember this? The story you've just heard is in Volume 1 of Remember This, Real Stories About Real People with a Twist. This is Brad Dison. Thank you for listening.